Hello, I'm Kate, and if you've ever felt like your family wasn't on your side, like they were hiding things from you, or worse, using you for their own gain, then you're not alone. For years, I lived in the shadows of my own family, constantly overlooked and dismissed. I thought it was just the way things were, until one day I discovered a secret so big it shattered everything I thought I knew about them. They lied to me, kept me out of the most important moments of my life, and even went as far as to steal what was rightfully mine. My inheritance, my house, my peace, gone in the blink of an eye. And now I'm faced with the hardest decision of my life. Do I keep forgiving them? Or do I stand up and take back what's mine? You won't believe what happened next. Stick around, and let me tell you the story you never saw coming. The afternoon sun trickled softly through the window, casting a warm, golden light across the living room. The room felt still, almost too still. I sat there by the window, staring at the old family photo on the mantelpiece. It wasn't the first time I'd looked at it, but today the image seemed different, more distant, almost foreign. In the photo, my younger self stood beside my older sister, both of us smiling under the bright summer sun. Our parents beamed proudly behind us, the kind of smile that seemed to say, "This is our perfect little family." But as I stared at that picture, the smile on my face in that moment felt like a lie. It had always been like this. My older sister, Elizabeth, was the one who shone the brightest. She was the one who always made the grades, got the praise, and knew how to hold the room's attention. And me? I was just there, the invisible one, the one who always seemed to fall into the shadows, no matter how hard I tried to stand in the light. I pulled my gaze away from the photo and let my eyes wander to the window. The neighborhood was quiet. The rustling leaves outside whispered in the breeze, and I found myself wondering, what had I become? Who was I really in this world where I was so often overlooked? In that moment, I could feel the familiar tightness in my chest, a feeling of being unseen, unheard. It wasn't just the photo that made me feel this way. It was everything. My whole life, it had felt like I was always waiting for someone to see me, to acknowledge me. But it never came. I took a deep breath and sighed. I needed to push these thoughts away. It was just another day in my life. Another afternoon of sitting in this same house, in this same space, where nothing ever changed. The sound of the doorbell startled me, pulling me out of my thoughts. I stood up quickly, smoothing my shirt and making my way toward the front door. As I opened it, I was greeted by my mother's voice, warm and familiar, though it carried that undertone of indifference I had grown so used to. "Dinner's ready," she called out as she stepped inside. I nodded and followed her to the dining room. The table was set, just as it always was, everything in its place, the silverware gleaming, the plates ready for the evening's meal. My father was already seated, reading the newspaper, and Elizabeth, as always, was perched at the head of the table, her face illuminated by the soft light from the chandelier above. Dinner began, as it always did, casual conversation. My father made some comment about the weather, my mother spoke about her day, and Elizabeth chimed in with her usual stories about her job, her latest achievements. And there it was, that subtle but biting compliment. My mother's words were light, but they stung. "Oh, Elizabeth," she said, her voice full of admiration. "You've really done so well at work lately. I'm so proud of you." I felt my stomach tighten. My eyes fell to my plate, my fork frozen in midair. No mention of my accomplishments, no acknowledgement of anything I had done, just Elizabeth, always Elizabeth. I had learned long ago to stay quiet, to not make a fuss. So, I just kept my head down, picking at my food, pretending that the hurt didn't matter. But it did. Every word, every passing glance toward Elizabeth was a reminder of the gap between us. The gap that I could never quite cross, no matter how hard I tried. Later that evening, after dinner was over, I was clearing the table when my mother asked me to help with the dishes, as she always did. I was used to this, of course. I was always the one who helped. My sister, however, was nowhere to be found. She was already retreating to her room, no doubt preparing for the next day's big presentation, or whatever it was that consumed her life these days. "Mom, I can do it," I said, lifting the plates and moving toward the sink. But then, as if to add insult to injury, Elizabeth poked her head around the corner and said, "Oh, I'm too tired tonight, Kate. You don't mind, do you?" The words hit me like a slap. I didn't even have the energy to protest. My mother's tired voice echoed through the house. "She's always the one who helps anyway." I froze. My heart twisted in my chest. Did she really just say that? Was that all I was to her? The one who always helped, no questions asked? I glanced over at her, my throat tightening with the urge to say something, but I didn't. I couldn't. I had spent years swallowing my words, accepting my place in this family, invisible and unimportant. I finished cleaning the dishes in silence, the bitterness slowly bubbling up inside me. It wasn't just the passing remark. It was everything. The years of being overlooked, of being second best, of being nothing more than the dutiful daughter who did what was expected of her. As I dried the last plate, my fingers brushed against an old envelope on the counter. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed to stand out against the clutter. I picked it up, my curiosity piqued. The envelope was yellowed with age, and as I turned it over, I saw the handwriting, my mother's. It was addressed to Elizabeth. My heart skipped a beat as I tore it open, the words inside immediately catching my eye. It was a letter of congratulations for some achievement of Elizabeth's. I didn't know the details, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the message inside. "I'm so proud of you, my darling girl. You've made us so proud, just like I always knew you would." I felt the world slip away as the words blurred in my vision. I stood frozen for a long moment, staring at the letter. This was the proof I had always suspected but never had. The confirmation that, for my mother, Elizabeth had always been the golden child, and I had always been the other one. The letter felt like a dagger to my heart. The final piece in the puzzle of my life. And in that moment, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I crumpled the letter in my hand, my chest heaving as the weight of my entire life came crashing down on me. I lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, the cold of the night seeping into the corners of my room. The letter from my mother still sits in my hand, crumpled slightly from my grip. It's the first thing I reach for when I wake, the last thing I touch before I go to sleep. The sunlight has long since faded, leaving the room with a cold, quiet silence. The house is still, save for the occasional creak of the old floorboards downstairs. Outside, the chill of autumn begins to settle in, a reminder that change is in the air, even if I don't want to face it. I can hear the wind rustling the leaves outside, almost as if it's mocking the stillness inside me. I open the letter again, the words blurring as I trace each line with my finger. It's addressed to Mary, my older sister. "Congratulations on your promotion, Mary. I couldn't be prouder of you," it says, followed by praise for her hard work, her determination, and how proud my mother is to be her mother. It's everything I have never heard. There's nothing in this letter for me, not one word, not one sentence that might have been written to me or about me. I close my eyes, letting the weight of it sink in. How many times had I tried to win my mother's love, to earn her praise? How many times had I been overlooked, ignored in favor of Mary, my always perfect sister? It's all so clear now. The years of being the other child, the one who wasn't quite good enough, the one who had to make herself small just to fit into the corners of her family's attention. I swallow hard, but the lump in my throat refuses to go away. This letter is just another reminder of what I've always known but couldn't admit. That I was never good enough, never worthy of my mother's love, that Mary would always come first. I want to scream. I want to throw this letter across the room, to burn it and never think of it again. But the truth is, it's already burned into me. There's no escaping it now. The tears well up, but I won't let them fall. I can't let them fall. Not yet. I have to hold on, to hold it together. But inside, everything is breaking. I get up, pacing the room, the letter still clutched tightly in my hand. I try to calm my thoughts, try to breathe through the sting in my chest, but it's no use. The pain doesn't fade. The betrayal, the hurt. It's as sharp as the first time I felt it. I'm tired. I'm tired of being the invisible one, the one who has to sit in the shadows while everyone else gets the spotlight. I look at the clock. It's late, and I know I should sleep, but sleep won't come, not when the truth feels like it's eating me alive. The next morning, I try to keep it together. I don't want anyone to see the cracks in me, not yet, not until I'm ready to face the world again, or at least until I figure out what I'm going to do about all of this. Mary shows up just before noon. She's wearing her usual smile, the one that makes everything seem okay, even when it isn't. She's holding a cup of coffee in her hand, like she always does when she's trying to make small talk. "Morning," she says, setting her things down on the counter. I nod, barely managing a smile. "Morning." She gives me a curious look, like she's noticed something's different, but doesn't say anything. I can't help it. The resentment I feel toward her is so raw now it's hard to hide. I want to say something, to confront her, to ask her if she knew about the letter, if she knew how I'd felt all these years. But the words don't come. They're stuck somewhere deep inside me, trapped in the space between my heart and my throat. She pulls out a chair and sits across from me, her eyes scanning the room, her smile still in place. "How's everything?" she asks, like nothing's wrong. Like she doesn't know what's been happening inside me for all these years. I feel the anger rising again, bubbling just beneath the surface. She doesn't know. She doesn't understand, not really. She never had to fight for attention, for love. She was always the favorite, always the one who did everything right. And I was always the one left behind. I can't hold it in anymore. "Do you know about the letter?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Mary freezes, her cup halfway to her lips. She lowers it slowly, setting it back on the table. For a moment, she just stares at me, her face unreadable. She starts, but then she stops herself, looking away. I can feel my pulse quicken. "You knew, didn't you? You knew she always treated me like the second choice. That I was never good enough for her." Mary looks down at her hands, twisting the edge of her sleeve. "It wasn't like that, Astria," she says softly, but I can see it in her eyes, the guilt, the unease. "It was always like that," I snap, standing up abruptly. The chair scrapes against the floor, but I don't care. I can't sit still anymore. I've spent my whole life trying to be something I'm not, all because I wanted her to love me. I wanted her to see me the way she sees you. Mary's eyes widen, but she says nothing. She's just sitting there, looking at me like I've broken something in her, like the truth is too heavy for her to carry. And that's when it hits me. She never questioned it. She never saw it, or maybe she just didn't care. Either way, she's been complicit. The weight of that realization nearly knocks me off my feet. "Did you ever wonder why she always chose you?" I ask, my voice shaking now. "Did you ever stop and think, maybe Astria needs her too?" Mary's lips tremble, but she doesn't answer. She can't. Because she doesn't have an answer that would make this okay. None of us do. The conversation ends there, unresolved, with no real closure. But I know now. I know the truth. And it cuts deeper than I ever imagined. Later that afternoon, I find myself standing in front of my mother, the letter still in my hand. It feels heavier now, more burdensome. I want to confront her, to demand answers, but the words won't come. I'm too afraid of what she might say, of what she might reveal. But I have to do this. I have to confront her. "Mom," I say, my voice shaking, "we need to talk." She looks up from her knitting, her expression neutral. "About what?" I take a deep breath, clutching the letter tightly. "About this," I say, holding it out for her to take. She hesitates, but finally, she reaches for it. Her face pales as she reads the words. When she's done, she looks up at me, her eyes hard and cold. "Astria, it's not what you think," she says, trying to downplay it. "It's just a note, nothing more." But I know better now. I know what it really is. I walked through the park, the chill of the evening air brushing against my skin. It had always been a place of family memories, a place where, for a fleeting moment in my childhood, we had all been happy. I sat on the old bench, the one where we used to laugh and share stories. The trees above me rustled softly in the breeze, and the sound reminded me of simpler times. But that simplicity had long since faded, replaced by the heavy weight of everything I had learned in the last few days. I still had the letter in my hand, the one that had shattered the illusion I had carried for so long. My mother's words on the page felt like they were burning a hole into my chest. I stared at the faint handwriting, remembering when those words would have made me feel loved and appreciated, but now they were a reminder of the favoritism I'd always suspected but never confirmed. The truth that had always been hidden was now out in the open, and I felt small. It was hard to breathe. The air felt too thick, as if it was pushing the life out of me. I thought back to the family dinners, the holidays, the moments when I had tried so hard to be seen, all those years, and yet, it had always been her, Mary, always her, and I was left behind, quietly trying to please, to be enough, but always failing. I wondered if I had ever really mattered to them, or if I was just the placeholder, the one who kept things running smoothly while everyone else got to shine. But the truth was too much now. The silence, the shadows I had lived in for so long, they had become suffocating. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for anymore. Maybe I had hoped that my mother would wake up one day, see me for who I really was, and apologize. Maybe I had hoped my family would change, but I knew now that was never going to happen. I stood up from the bench, my fingers gripping the letter so tightly that I thought it might tear. I had to make a decision. There was no going back. I couldn't keep hiding in the hope that things would somehow improve. I had to take control of my own life, my own story. I met Sarah at the cafe later that afternoon. It had been years since we last saw each other, but when I walked in, I saw her immediately. She hadn't changed much, except for the faint lines around her eyes that spoke of her own struggles. We exchanged pleasantries, but I could tell something was off with me. I could feel it in the air, my unease, my unresolved pain. We sat down with coffee in front of us, and for a while there was silence between us. I could tell she was waiting for me to speak. Finally, I took a deep breath. "I found a letter," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's from my mom, to Mary. She's always treated me like I didn't matter. But that letter..." I trailed off, feeling the lump in my throat. Sarah's eyes softened. "Kate, I'm sorry." I looked down at my hands. I've spent my whole life trying to be good enough for them, for my mom, and now I know I was always in the background. Sarah reached out and touched my hand. "That's not true. You are enough." But I wasn't to them. I wasn't the one they wanted. The words came out in a rush. I wasn't the one who got the praise, the attention. It was always Mary, and I was always left behind. "I know that feeling," Sarah said quietly. She leaned in, her voice lowering. "My mom always preferred my brother over me. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I spent years trying to make her love me the way she loved him, but I realized it wasn't going to happen. It took me a long time, but I had to let it go." Her words hit me like a punch in the chest. Sarah had been through it too. She understood. She wasn't the only one who had dealt with this kind of pain, and it was somehow comforting to know that I wasn't alone. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know. I thought I was the only one." "No one tells you that it's okay to feel hurt," Sarah said. "But you don't have to carry this burden by yourself anymore. I'm here, Kate. You don't have to do it alone." I felt a tear slip down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear that. I needed to let go of my pride, let go of the belief that I should handle everything on my own. It wasn't weakness to ask for help. I needed to rebuild not just my relationship with my family, but with myself. That night, I sat at my desk, the weight of the day still pressing down on me. I opened my email and began typing. My fingers trembled, but I didn't stop. I had to do this. It was time for the truth. Time for the confrontation I had been avoiding for so long. "Mom, I need to talk." I found the letter you wrote to Mary. The one congratulating her for what I've always wished I could have. Her attention. I need you to understand something. I can't live in the shadow of my family's expectations any longer. I've been hurt for years, and I can't keep pretending it's okay. I want the truth. Not for closure, but because I deserve to know. I read over the email several times before hitting send. A cold shiver ran through me as I watched the message disappear into the ether. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew that this was the only way forward. A message pinged on my phone just as I leaned back in my chair. It was from Mary. "Are you okay?" the message read. "After everything with Mom, I just wanted to check in." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me, but underneath it there was something else, a flicker of hope. Mary had reached out, even if it wasn't much. Maybe there was a chance for us, for me to be seen, to be understood. But I couldn't wait for that to fix everything. I had to fix myself. I put my phone down, took a deep breath, and stood up. The journey ahead was long, but I was ready to take the first step. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. My mother's email blinked back at me on the screen, and my heart thudded in my chest as I clicked open the message. I had expected an apology, maybe some acknowledgement of the years of neglect and emotional neglect I had suffered. Instead, I was met with an empty excuse. "I don't know why you feel this way, Kate. Perhaps it's just a misunderstanding," she wrote. "I've always loved you. You know that, don't you?" The words felt hollow, meaningless. I read the email again, searching for something, anything, that would show some remorse for the pain she had caused, but it wasn't there. Her response was more about defending herself than understanding me. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, rising like a tidal wave. I slammed the phone down on the bed, the screen glowing back at me in the quiet, dim room. Was this it? Was I really going to let her do this to me again? I had given her my truth, and she had brushed it aside as if it didn't matter. No, I wasn't going to let this be the end of it. Not this time. I stood up, my hands trembling with the force of my emotions. I had been quiet for far too long, letting her dismiss my feelings, my pain. I had spent my whole life waiting for her to change, hoping she would see me for who I was. But that was a lie. She wasn't going to change, and neither was my family. I needed to face the truth. This had to stop. The phone call with my mother was set. I told her I was coming over. I felt a pit in my stomach as I hung up. There was no turning back now. When I arrived at her house, the familiar smell of baked cookies filled the air, but it didn't comfort me like it once had. Everything felt suffocating, like I was stepping into a house that never truly felt like home. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room. My mother was sitting on the couch, her eyes not meeting mine. She looked smaller somehow, her frailty more evident now that I saw her clearly. The guilt I had once felt about confronting her suddenly evaporated. This wasn't about her. It was about me. "Mom," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." She glanced up, startled by my tone. "About what?" "About the letter," I said, my pulse quickening. "I read it. The letter you wrote to Mary. You've been treating her like the favorite child, and I was just in the background." "Do you have any idea how that feels?" Her face hardened, her lips pressed into a thin line. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, trying to avoid my gaze. "I didn't think it was that important." "Of course it's important," I said, my voice rising. "You made me feel invisible. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough for you, like I never mattered." My heart pounded as I stared at her, waiting for some kind of reaction. But she just sat there, silent, her eyes distant. "Kate, you're making a big deal out of nothing," she said finally, her voice tight. "It was just a letter. You've always been so sensitive. Maybe you misunderstood." I couldn't believe it. The dismissiveness in her voice, the way she brushed away my pain like it was nothing. It was the same thing she had always done. "No, Mom," I said, fighting back the tears. "It's not just a letter. It's years of me trying to be seen, trying to be good enough for you. And it's not just a misunderstanding. This is real, and you can't just pretend it's not. She sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping. I didn't know how to connect with you, Kate. I just couldn't. Mary was always easier. I didn't know how to fix that. I froze. Her words stung, but there was a part of me that felt pity for her. She had never even tried to understand me, had she? She had never tried to learn who I was, what I needed. All these years, and she had never truly tried. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. But I never meant to hurt you. I shook my head. You didn't mean to, but you did. And I can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. Her face softened, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, regret maybe, or guilt. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I stood up, my legs shaking with a mixture of anger and relief. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm done pretending. I can't keep coming back here hoping you'll change. Kate, please don't go, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't mean it. You're my daughter. I love you. The words sounded empty now. I had heard them for years, but they had never felt real. I know you love me, but it's not enough, I said, my voice breaking. It's never been enough. I turned and walked out the door. As I left, I felt the weight of years of pain and frustration begin to lift off my shoulders. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let my family control my happiness anymore. As I stepped into the cold evening air, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my brother, asking if I was okay after the confrontation with Mom. My heart clenched, but I didn't answer. I didn't know if I could trust him yet. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer the person I used to be. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let anything hold me back. The early morning sun filtered through my blinds, casting soft rays across the apartment. My phone buzzed, cutting through the silence of the morning. It was a text message from my brother. Hey, Kate. I know we haven't been close lately, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not seeing what was happening and for not standing up for you. I want to make things right if you'll let me. My stomach twisted. I stared at the message for a long time, the words swimming in my mind. Was this genuine? Or was this just another attempt to smooth things over, to pretend like everything could go back to normal? The betrayal still stung deeply. I wasn't sure how to feel about this sudden gesture of kindness from my brother. He had always been in the background, never once questioning the way things were. The fact that he was now apologizing made me wonder if he truly understood the depth of what I had been through, or if he was just trying to absolve himself of guilt. But then again, I realized I didn't have to know his motives. What mattered was what I chose to do now. I put the phone down, my thoughts racing. I had been trapped in the cycle of waiting for my family to change, but nothing had changed. They never would. I took a deep breath. Maybe this was a sign to finally break free, to stop clinging to the hope that I could fix everything. I had to take control of my own life, no matter what the outcome. The phone rang shortly after. It was him. I hesitated before picking up. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Kate, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I wanted to tell you how sorry I am for not being there. I've seen how Mom treated you, and I know it wasn't right. I'm here for you now, okay? His words felt hollow, like he was just reading off a script. I felt anger welling up inside me, but I bit my tongue. You don't get it, I said, my voice rising. It's not just about being there for me now. You've been complicit in this whole thing. You saw it and did nothing. You've been living in this bubble, thinking everything was fine, and now you want to make it right? I paused, trying to collect myself, but the floodgates had already opened. You don't understand how much this hurt me. All these years I've tried to get your attention, tried to get Mom's, but nothing I did was ever good enough. And now after everything you're apologizing, but what good does that do? There was a long pause. I could hear him fumbling on the other end. I didn't know what to say, he replied quietly. I thought it would all get better eventually, but I see now that I was wrong. I felt my blood boil, but I didn't let myself snap. Not yet. You should have known, and you should have said something sooner. But now it's too late. I can't fix what's broken. We both fell silent, the weight of the conversation hanging between us. My hands were trembling, but my heart felt oddly calm. I had finally said what I needed to say, even if it didn't change anything. Later that afternoon, I found myself wandering into a cafe. I needed space to think, to breathe. I ordered a coffee, then took a seat by the window. The day felt unusually heavy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had done up until now had led to this moment. I stared out at the bustling street, my mind still reeling from the conversation with my brother. As much as I wanted to move forward, a part of me kept looking back. Was I doing the right thing? Was cutting ties with my family the only way to heal? Or was I being too harsh? That's when I saw her. Lily, an old friend from high school, was sitting at a nearby table, looking just as surprised to see me as I was to see her. She smiled warmly when she recognized me. Kate? Wow, it's been forever. We exchanged pleasantries, and soon enough we were talking like no time had passed. I felt a strange sense of relief in her company, her kindness reminding me that not everyone in my life was tied to the toxic dynamics of my family. As we talked, I opened up. I told her about everything, about my mother, my brother, the letter, and the years of emotional neglect. Lily listened quietly, offering no judgment, just the kind of understanding I had craved for so long. You've been through so much, she said after a long pause, but you're doing the right thing. You're standing up for yourself, Kate. That's more than most people ever do. Her words struck me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I had been searching for validation until that moment. I didn't need my family's approval to move forward. I had already started making the decision to reclaim my life, and this conversation with Lily made me feel like I wasn't alone in it. As the conversation wound down, I paid for my coffee, feeling lighter than I had in days. It wasn't just Lily's words, it was the realization that I wasn't doing this alone. I had friends, I had support, even if it wasn't from my family. I walked out of the cafe with a newfound sense of confidence. I was no longer waiting for my family to change. It was time for me to take control, to walk my own path, without apology. The evening air felt cold as Kate walked into her family's living room, a room she once called home, but now seemed foreign. The walls, the furniture, everything was a reminder of the years she had spent trying to fit in, to be acknowledged. Tonight, however, everything would change. She had called a family meeting, and she was determined to confront the years of pain and manipulation she had endured. As she sat down on the couch, the weight of what was about to unfold hung heavy on her chest. Her heart raced with both fear and anticipation, but she steeled herself. She knew what needed to be done. There was no going back now. Kate, why are we having this meeting? Her mother asked, her voice dripping with feigned confusion. You've been distant lately, and now you're calling this meeting? What's going on? Kate took a deep breath, her pulse quickening. I've been distant because for years, none of you have ever truly seen me. Not for who I am, not for what I've done. You've always treated me like I didn't matter. She could see the flicker of discomfort in her mother's eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. She wasn't about to let her mother's dismissive attitude derail her. She had been silent for too long, and now it was time for her voice to be heard. Mom, you've spent my entire life making me feel invisible. All these years, I've been trying to get your attention, to be recognized, but you've always favored Mary. You've always made it clear that I wasn't enough for you. Kate's voice cracked as the words spilled out, but she didn't flinch. Well, I can't live like that anymore. I won't. Her mother's face tightened, but she didn't interrupt. Kate continued, her voice growing more confident. I'm done pretending. I've spent so long trying to make myself small enough to fit into this family, but I'm not small. And I won't shrink anymore. The silence in the room was suffocating, the tension palpable. Her mother's eyes narrowed as she took a step forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "You don't know what you're talking about," her mother replied, her voice defensive. "I've done the best I could. Your sister Mary, she's always been the one who needed more. You were always the strong one. You've never needed me in the way Mary did." Kate clenched her fists, the years of suppressed anger bubbling to the surface. "That's just it, isn't it? You think because I didn't cry out for attention I didn't need it. But I did. I needed you to see me, to love me. But you were too caught up in playing favorites to ever see that." Her mother flinched as if Kate's words physically hurt her, but Kate wasn't finished. This was her moment. "You think it's all in my head, that I'm making it up. But I'm not. I've spent my whole life feeling like an afterthought, and I'm done." Just as Kate's words began to sink in, her mother's face contorted, and she blurted out something Kate wasn't prepared for. "I didn't know how to connect with you, Kate. You were always so different. I always felt closer to Mary. It wasn't that I didn't try, but I just couldn't." Kate's world tilted. She had expected many things: accusations, lies, denial, but not this. Her mother's admission hit her like a punch to the gut. "You couldn't?" Kate repeated, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You couldn't even try harder? You couldn't even try to love me the way I needed?" Her mother looked away, ashamed. Kate stood up, her hands shaking but her resolve steady. "No, I'm done. I'm done waiting for you to change. I'm done being the one who's always overlooked, always second." Kate turned to leave, her heart pounding in her chest. "I can't keep pretending this is a family. Not anymore." As she reached the door, her mother's voice called out to her. "Kate, please don't leave like this. We can talk about it." But Kate didn't stop. She walked out of the house, her footsteps echoing in the silence behind her. Kate stepped out into the cool evening air, taking a deep breath. The weight of the conversation, the years of pent-up emotion, everything hit her all at once. She was shaken, her hands still trembling, but she felt something she hadn't felt in years: relief. But before she could get too far, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her lawyer. "Kate, I need you to be ready for a legal battle. There are complications with the family estate and we'll need to take action." Kate stopped dead in her tracks, the world around her blurring. This wasn't just about emotional closure anymore. This was a battle for her future, for her rightful share of her family's wealth. For the first time in her life, Kate realized that the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The sun was beginning to set over the family estate, casting long shadows over the grand house that had once symbolized security and unity. But now, as Kate stepped across the threshold, it felt more like a battlefield. The family she had longed to be a part of was now the very force she had to fight against. It had been only days since the confrontation with her mother, but already the family was retaliating. Subtle acts of resistance, like spreading rumors about her intentions, cutting her out of conversations, and even undermining her achievements, had become commonplace. Kate had been excluded from family decisions, and her calls for clarity had gone unanswered. Kate stood in the living room, her fists clenched at her sides, feeling the pressure building. "They think they can break me," she thought bitterly. The weight of her family's efforts to crush her spirit was suffocating, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She wouldn't go back to being the quiet, unseen daughter. She had a voice, and it was time to make sure they heard it. The family wasn't going to get away with this. Not this time. "Why are you even here?" Her mother's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Kate turned to face her, her expression hardening. "I'm here to take what's mine," she said, her voice steady. "You don't get to control me anymore. You never did, and I'm not going to let you anymore." Her mother looked shocked, her gaze narrowing as she tried to play it off. "You're being dramatic, Kate. All we've ever done is love you." But Kate saw through it. The words were hollow, empty. "Love me? Is that what you call it? Pushing me aside while you coddle Mary?" Kate's eyes flashed with the anger she had held back for so long. "This is the truth, Mom. The truth you've been hiding from me. And I won't let you manipulate me anymore." Her mother's face twisted with frustration, but there was a hint of something else, something Kate couldn't place. Was it guilt? Or was it just another layer of the control she had so carefully crafted? As Kate's mother remained silent, she knew this confrontation was only the beginning. The room, thick with tension, held the silent understanding that there was no going back. Kate had stepped into the ring, and now she had to stay strong. As the evening wore on, Kate retreated to her apartment, the weight of the confrontation pressing heavily on her chest. The family had tried to make her feel small again, but Kate wasn't backing down. The emotional toll was immense. She could feel the exhaustion settling in. It was so tempting to call it quits, to slip back into the life they had forced her to live. But as she sat alone, she reflected on the moment when she finally stood up for herself. She couldn't afford to give up now. The years of silence had led her here, and there was no turning back. Her phone buzzed, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a message from her lawyer. "We found something significant." Kate's heart raced. The last few days had been emotionally draining, but she knew this was a sign that she was on the right path. Whatever her lawyer had found, it could be the key to winning this battle. The next day, Kate met her lawyer in person. She listened intently as the lawyer explained how they had uncovered a hidden document. It was an old family trust document that Kate's mother had manipulated to block her access to the funds she was supposed to inherit. For years, Kate had worked tirelessly to make something of herself, and her mother had worked equally hard to prevent her from ever succeeding. Her mother's role in this manipulation hit Kate like a freight train. The betrayal ran deep. This wasn't just emotional neglect, it was a calculated effort to sabotage her life, to keep her small and dependent. This is it, Kate thought, the realization hitting her like a wave. She had the proof she needed, the tangible evidence of her mother's actions. This was no longer just about standing up to her family. This was about justice, about taking back what was rightfully hers. Later that day, as Kate prepared to make the call to her lawyer, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her brother. "Kate, we need to talk. I don't like what's going on." Kate felt a surge of anger. She had just fought her way through one confrontation, and now here he was, asking to talk, offering no explanation of what had happened. She wasn't sure whether to believe him or not. After everything, how could she trust anyone in this family? Still, she called him. The conversation started civil enough, but soon the tension escalated. Her brother began insisting that they just needed to move past everything, that it was time to let it all go. Kate refused, demanding that he acknowledge her pain and stop minimizing everything that had happened. And then, in the heat of the argument, her brother dropped a bombshell. He admitted that he had known about their mother's favoritism, that he had known all along and had chosen to ignore it. He had been complicit, enabling the very system of abuse Kate had fought against. The confession hit Kate hard. It felt like another betrayal, another person in her life who had failed her. The realization sank in like a cold blade. The phone call left Kate shaken, but it also crystallized her resolve. The game had changed. She wasn't just fighting her mother anymore, she was fighting for her life, for her future. She couldn't trust anyone from her past, not even her brother, but with the evidence in her hands, she felt ready. As she hung up, Kate took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. The battle had just begun. The family gathered in the living room, the air thick with tension. Kate could feel her pulse racing as she took her seat, facing her mother and siblings. The room, once a place of warmth and comfort, now felt like a battlefield. Kate had spent so many years hiding in the shadows, but not today. Today, she would face the truth, and no one would be able to stop her. Kate's heart pounded in her chest as she mentally prepared herself for what was coming. She knew that this moment would change everything, perhaps forever. Her family thought she would back down again, but this time was different. This time, she was armed with the truth, and she was ready to expose everything. She stood up, feeling the weight of the family's eyes on her. "I'm not here to make peace," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. I'm here to make sure the truth is heard. All of it. Her mother's face hardened. What are you talking about, Kate? Kate pulled the family document from her bag and slammed it down onto the table. This, she said, pointing to the papers, is proof of the manipulation I've suffered for years. You tried to block my inheritance. You kept me from what was rightfully mine. She met her mother's eyes with a cold, unwavering gaze. And I'm done pretending it didn't happen. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Her siblings exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of disbelief and anger. Kate, this is ridiculous, her older sister Mary finally said. You're blowing everything out of proportion. This is just a misunderstanding. No, Kate snapped, her voice rising. It's not. I've spent my whole life trying to get you to see me, to get any of you to see me. But now I know the truth. You've been shutting me down, making sure I never had a chance. Her mother, ever the manipulator, opened her mouth to speak, but Kate was faster. You always made me feel small, invisible, and now I know why. You did everything you could to make sure I failed. And you didn't just do it to me. You did it to us all. Her mother's face twisted with anger, but Kate stood her ground, the fire of years of suppressed rage burning bright within her. Kate felt a small sense of satisfaction as she watched her mother struggle to find words, but the satisfaction was fleeting. The next words her mother said sent a shock through her chest. I didn't want you to succeed, Kate. I didn't think you deserved it. You were always so different. You always pushed back, and I didn't know how to handle that. Her mother admitted, her voice cold and distant. Kate's blood ran cold. You sabotaged my entire life, she whispered, the depth of the betrayal hitting her like a ton of bricks. But before she could react further, her lawyer arrived, holding a sealed envelope. Kate, he said, I have something you need to hear. He handed her a small device, and as she pressed play, the words on the recording hit her like a punch to the gut. It was her mother, speaking to a lawyer, admitting that she had purposely kept Kate from accessing her trust fund. I did it to teach her a lesson, her mother said, her voice dripping with disdain. She needs to learn humility. Kate's eyes widened in disbelief as the room around her seemed to spin. She had been right all along. This wasn't just a series of misunderstandings. It was intentional. Her mother had deliberately set out to ruin her life. The room fell into a stunned silence. Kate's siblings exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Her mother, who had once been the central figure of Kate's life, was now exposed as the villain in her story. And yet, Kate knew this wasn't the end. With the truth laid bare, Kate's anger flared once again. I'm done, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. Done being the scapegoat, done letting you control my life. I'm walking away. As she stood, her family erupted into chaos. Her mother tried to protest, but Kate didn't listen. She turned on her heel and began to walk out of the room, the weight of the years of manipulation and deceit lifting with every step she took. But just as she reached the door, her father spoke up. Kate, he said, his voice quiet but filled with regret. I knew about it all. I saw what was happening, and I didn't intervene. I'm sorry. Kate froze, her heart breaking as the realization hit her. The one person she had always counted on, her father, had known about the abuse and had done nothing. He too had been complicit. The final blow landed, and Kate's resolve hardened. I don't need your apology, she said, her voice cold. You're just as guilty as she is. With that, Kate walked out of the house, her family left in chaos behind her. But as she stepped into the cool night air, she felt something shift inside her, a sense of freedom, of liberation. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in her life, Kate felt like she was in control. Her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. There's a new development in your case. It's time to take the next step. Kate took a deep breath. I'm ready, she thought. I'm finally ready. The morning light streamed softly through the blinds of my apartment, casting long shadows on the hardwood floors. I sat by the window, my hands wrapped tightly around a warm cup of coffee, trying to absorb the whirlwind of the past few days. It was as if the universe had decided that it was finally time for me to know the truth. truths I had been too afraid to acknowledge for years. Yesterday's family confrontation, the weight of all those words and accusations hung heavily in my mind. It was over, and yet the echoes of the argument were still with me. I had exposed every hidden lie, every manipulation, and now I knew that there was no turning back. My family, the people I had once longed to connect with, were beyond repair. As the coffee cooled in my hands, I felt an odd mix of clarity and grief. The family I once wished for, the family I had always believed could be fixed, was not going to change. There would be no miracle healing, no sudden epiphany where they would all realize how much they had hurt me. And so I let go. I placed my cup on the counter and stood, walking over to the window to look out at the street below. The world moved on outside, unaware of the emotional battle I had just fought. But I couldn't remain frozen in the past. The past had its place, but it no longer had any power over me. I was done clinging to the hope that someday my family would be different. It was time to move forward, time to rebuild my life on my terms. The park was quiet when I arrived. It had been years since I'd come here, and in some ways it felt like stepping into another life, one where I was still a child, where the world felt simpler and my family still held all the power. I used to come here with them, my mother holding my hand, my sister skipping along beside us. Those were the days when I believed that family was supposed to be a safe haven. I walked along the familiar path, my footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. It was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in ages, I felt a small spark of hope. This place, once a symbol of everything I had longed for, now represented the person I was becoming. It was a reminder of who I had been, but also of who I was about to be. A person free from the ties that had held me back for far too long. As I sat on a bench and looked out over the trees, I remembered my younger self, sitting here with a different set of dreams. I had always wanted so much: validation, love, acceptance from my family. But now, I realized that the only thing I needed was to accept myself. For the first time, I felt light, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I could breathe. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out, glancing at the screen. It was my lawyer, calling with news that I had been waiting for. My heart skipped a beat as I answered. "Kate," my lawyer's voice was steady but serious. "The judge ruled in your favor. You won the inheritance case. The documents are going to be signed soon. It's over. You've reclaimed what was always yours." I couldn't help it. Tears filled my eyes as I pressed my palm to my mouth. I had done it. I had fought and I had won. In that moment, all the pain, all the years of manipulation, and the emotional struggle faded away. I had taken control of my life, and now, with the legal battle behind me, I was free to move forward. The afternoon was slipping away as I made my way back to my apartment. I hadn't expected to run into anyone, but as I walked up the steps, I saw someone standing by the door. It was an old friend from high school, someone I hadn't seen in years. "Kate," she said, a soft smile on her face. "I saw your posts. I just want you to know, I'm so proud of you. I know it's been hard, but you're doing the right thing. You've got a whole world ahead of you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know this woman well back then, but the fact that she had noticed my struggle, that she was proud of me, it meant something. It reminded me that there were people out there who saw me for who I was, beyond the family dynamics, beyond the pain. "Thank you," I said, smiling through my tears. "That means more to me than you know." As she walked away, I stood there for a moment, feeling a sense of validation I hadn't realized I'd needed. Sometimes it was the small, unexpected moments that made all the difference. And right then, I realized I didn't need to seek validation from the people who had hurt me. I had it within myself. That evening, I sat in my apartment going through old family photos. I wasn't throwing them away. I wasn't that harsh, but I was packing them away in a box, storing them carefully. I didn't need them anymore. They didn't need to define me. As I placed the last photo into the box, I held one final picture in my hands, the one of me as a child, hopeful and innocent. The tears came, but they were different now. They weren't tears of grief or regret, but of release. I could let go. I had to. And I was ready. I knew that if I didn't, I would forever be tethered to a past that no longer served me. The pain was still there, but I was no longer bound by it. Just as I was about to close the box, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my mother standing there, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. I've made a mistake, she said, her voice trembling. I've hurt you so much, and I'm so sorry. Please, can we try again? Please, let's rebuild what we had. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel the intense anger that had consumed me for years. But I also didn't feel the desire to go back to what had always been. There was no going back. I've thought a lot about this, I said, my voice firm but calm. I can't go back to what we were. I can't accept the things you've done and just forget them. I need to move forward, and I can't do that with you in my life anymore. Her face crumpled, but I stood my ground. I had finally learned to choose myself. As my mother left, I closed the door softly behind her. I wasn't angry anymore. I was at peace. I had made the right decision. I was ready to walk away from the past and build something new. I walked over to the window, looking out at the world beyond. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the past on my shoulders. I was free. The light from the morning sun filtered softly through the blinds, casting delicate patterns on the floor of my apartment. I sat by the window, coffee cup in hand, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time in years, the weight of my past didn't feel so heavy. The storm that had raged in my life, my family's betrayals, my own confusion, and the chaos of the past months had finally begun to settle. I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't known was possible. Yesterday, my mother had come to me with her apology, but today, I woke up knowing that I didn't need her apology to move forward. I had already made peace with myself. The family I had tried so desperately to fix, to repair, was no longer my responsibility. The truth was that I had been carrying the burden of their dysfunction for far too long. And now, it was time to set it down and walk away. As I sipped my coffee, I realized something important, something I hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. For the first time in my life, I was free. Not just from the family I had tried so hard to hold together, but from the old version of myself that had clung to them. I was free to embrace who I truly was, to live my life on my own terms. The past no longer held me in its grip. The afternoon sun was high in the sky as I sat in a cafe downtown, a place I used to visit when I felt lost. I hadn't been here in a while. The familiarity of it all was comforting, but today it felt different. Today I wasn't the same person who had once sat in this very cafe, feeling small and unsure of herself. My old friend Sarah was sitting across from me, smiling kindly as we caught up. Her eyes sparkled with warmth, and as we talked about the changes in our lives, I felt a new sense of confidence growing within me. I told her about my decision to leave the past behind, about how I was ready to build a future that was mine, one that wasn't defined by my family's dysfunction. "You know," Sarah said, her voice soft but steady, "you've always been strong, Kate. I'm proud of you for realizing it. You deserve this peace." For the first time in years, I felt a sense of pride that didn't come with any strings attached. It wasn't pride in anything I had achieved to please others, but pride in who I had become. Sarah's words meant more than she could know. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I had finally found a new sense of self-worth, one that came from within. As we continued to talk, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a notification from my email. It was from the company I had interviewed with weeks ago. I opened it quickly, heart racing. "Congratulations, Kate. We are excited to offer you the position. We look forward to welcoming you to our team." I couldn't believe it. My heart soared. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. I had done it. I had created a future for myself, one that wasn't tethered to the toxic past. That evening I sat in my apartment, the sounds of the city softly drifting in through the open window. I felt the weight of everything that had happened, the good and the bad, but there was no more fear, no more hesitation. I had made it through the worst, and I was ready to embrace what came next. I took out a blank sheet of paper and began to write a letter, one I never thought I would write. It was a letter to my younger self, the version of me who had been lost and unsure. The words flowed easily, as if I had been holding them in for years. I wrote about everything I had learned, about the strength I had found within myself, and about how far I had come. I acknowledged the pain, but more importantly, I embraced the idea of forgiveness, not just for my family, but for myself. Forgiveness didn't mean excusing the hurt. It didn't mean pretending everything was okay. It simply meant releasing the hold the past had on me. I needed to forgive myself for carrying that burden for so long, and now I could finally let it go. The next morning, I found myself back in the park where I had first begun to heal. It was a peaceful, quiet morning, and the world seemed to be holding its breath, just as I was. I sat on the same bench where I had once felt the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me, but today I felt lighter, stronger. The air smelled different now, not heavy with regret, but fresh with possibility. I wasn't alone for long. As I sat there reflecting on how far I had come, I saw someone approaching. It was a counselor I had met a few months ago, someone I had been seeing periodically as I worked through my emotional journey. She smiled at me and sat beside me, her presence a reminder that I wasn't walking this road alone. "You've come a long way, Kate," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "I'm feeling ready," I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Ready to let go, ready to move forward." The counselor nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "You've done the hard part. Now it's time to focus on healing, on growing." This is just the beginning. Later that afternoon, as I walked back toward my apartment, I bumped into an old family friend, someone I hadn't seen in years. They had heard about the changes in my life through mutual acquaintances and had been following my journey. They were genuinely concerned, but more than that, they admired my strength. "I've always known you were strong, Kate," they said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You've always had it in you." I smiled, grateful for their kind words. It was an unexpected validation, but it was exactly what I needed at that moment. It reminded me that the strength I had found within myself was visible to others, and I wasn't alone. That evening, I made the decision. It was time to move on, not just from my family, but from the apartment I had lived in for years. It was a symbol of everything I was leaving behind. I started packing, carefully placing old photos into boxes. I wasn't throwing them away. I wasn't that cruel. But I was putting them away, storing them out of sight, as I prepared for the next chapter of my life. As I worked, I thought about how far I had come. I wasn't the same person who had moved into this apartment, hoping to fix what was broken. I was stronger now, more sure of who I was and what I wanted. This was my life, and I was finally taking control of it. The clock ticked slowly on the wall of my apartment as I sat in the silence, the calm before the storm. The events of the past few days had left me in an emotional whirlwind, but tonight felt different. Tonight I would finally confront everything that had been holding me back for so long. The knock on my door startled me, and I knew it was her, my mother. The one person who had done more damage to me than anyone else, yet still held a grip on my heart, a grip I was desperate to loosen. I opened the door, and there she stood, her face drawn, eyes red. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her presence filling the room with a tension I could almost feel in my bones. "I'm sorry, Kate," she said, her voice shaky. "I've been wrong. I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back, but I need you to know how sorry I am." I stood there for a moment, frozen, unsure of how to respond. There was a part of me that wanted to forgive her, to make it all go away and pretend like none of it ever happened. But I knew better now. I had spent too many years forgiving her with empty words, and I had learned that forgiveness could not be given without true change. "Why now?" I finally asked, my voice quiet but firm. "Why come to me now, after everything that's happened?" She looked away, her eyes searching for an answer she wasn't sure she had. "I was scared. I was scared of losing you." "But you lost me a long time ago, Mom," I said, my voice rising. You've been pushing me away for years, making me feel invisible, like I never mattered. I've been trying to fix a relationship that was never going to work." Her face fell, the tears in her eyes only making the situation worse. She started to say something, but I cut her off. "No, you don't get to make excuses anymore," I said, my anger finally breaking free. "I'm done trying to fix this. You don't get to control my life anymore." I stepped back, feeling the full weight of my own words. The anger, the frustration, the hurt, they were all pouring out of me, and I didn't know how to stop it. But as I looked at my mother, I realized that I wasn't just angry at her anymore. I was angry at myself. For all the years I had let her dictate my self-worth. For all the times I had begged for her love and attention only to be met with indifference. The argument escalated from there, each word a heavy blow to the fragile facade we had both built. She tried to justify her actions, to explain away her neglect, but none of it mattered anymore. The truth was out, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into silence again. Just as I thought the conversation had reached its peak, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it quickly. My lawyer's name appeared on the screen. I grabbed the phone, feeling a surge of tension flood my veins. "You're not going to believe this," I muttered, pressing the phone to my ear. The conversation on the other end was a blur, but I caught the key points. "We found the missing documents. Your mother's been hiding them, the ones that would allow you to claim your inheritance." The room went silent, the words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. My mother's face went pale, the reality of her actions dawning on her. "You've been stealing from me?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. "All this time you've been holding me back, keeping me from everything I deserved?" She didn't answer. The silence between us was deafening. I stood up, shaking with emotion. I wanted to leave, to walk away and never look back, but instead I turned to face her, standing taller than I had ever felt in my life. "Do you realize what you've done?" I asked, my voice steady now despite the storm raging inside. "You tried to destroy me, and for what? To teach me a lesson? To make me suffer?" Her face was stricken with guilt, but it was too late for apologies. "You've made your choices, and now I have to make mine," I said, taking a deep breath. I'm done. I'm done being your scapegoat, your pawn, your burden. I've spent too long trying to fit into a family that doesn't care about me." The conversation didn't end with some dramatic moment of reconciliation. My mother left in tears, and I sat there in the silence that followed, feeling an overwhelming mix of sorrow and relief. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew that for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. The next day, I started packing. My mind was focused on the practicalities, finding a new place, getting my affairs in order, but beneath it all was a sense of empowerment I had never known. I was moving forward, not just physically, but emotionally. The weight of the past was finally lifting, and I felt lighter with each box I packed. I had received a job offer earlier that week, and as I sorted through my things, I realized just how much that job represented to me. It wasn't just a paycheck, it was my ticket to freedom. It was the opportunity I had fought for, the opportunity I would now claim for myself. But just as I was about to close the last box, my phone rang. It was my mother. I hesitated before answering. "I've been wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "I was selfish, and I know I hurt you. I can't take back what I did, but I'm sorry. Please forgive me." I sat there for a long moment, letting her words wash over me. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't sure if forgiveness was possible. I had to let her go, and in doing so, I had to let go of the hope that things would ever be different. "I can't," I said softly. "Not now. Maybe not ever." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then she whispered, "I understand." That evening, I took a walk in the park near my new apartment. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the path. I walked slowly, breathing in the cool evening air. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, I felt ready for whatever came next. I was free. The weight of everything that had happened in the past few months bore heavily on my shoulders. Yet, as I sat in my new apartment, a strange sense of peace washed over me. The confrontation was coming, my final confrontation with my mother, and I knew it was time. No more games, no more hiding. This would be the moment I would finally close the chapter on my family's manipulation and reclaim the future I had long been denied. I stood by the window in my living room, the cool breeze drifting in as the sun began to set. I held the estate documents in my hand, their significance pressing down on me with each passing second. These papers, these cold facts, were the key to unlocking the truth about everything that had happened between my mother and me. This was the moment when I would confront her, once and for all, and put an end to the emotional hold she had on me. I took a deep breath, feeling the anticipation coil in my stomach. The phone call was already made. She was on her way. I didn't know if I was ready, but I had no choice but to face it. This was the end of the road, the final reckoning. The doorbell rang, and my heart skipped a beat. She was here. I opened the door, and there she stood, just as I remembered, but there was something different in her eyes today. It was as if she knew that this wasn't just another conversation. This was the last one. This was the moment that would define the rest of our lives. "Kate," she said softly, stepping inside. "I've come to apologize." I stood there silently as the words she had spoken so many times before echoed in my mind. But this time, I wasn't going to accept them. Not without the truth. I didn't sit down. I kept standing, the weight of everything pressing on me as I pulled the documents from the table. "These," I said, holding them out for her to see, "are the documents that prove everything you've done, the things you've hidden from me, the inheritance you kept from me, the opportunities you took from me, all because you didn't want me to have anything that wasn't on your terms." Her face paled as she looked at the papers, her hands trembling. "Kate, you don't understand. I did it because I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" I almost laughed, but the bitterness choked me. "You weren't protecting me, Mom. You were controlling me. You kept me from having the life I deserved because you were scared. Scared of me becoming something more than what you could handle. You never saw me. You only saw your fear." She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "You never saw me," I repeated, my voice firm. "But I see you now. I see the truth." The anger that had been bubbling inside me for so long finally broke free. I didn't hold back. I told her everything. The years of emotional neglect, the silent treatment, the gaslighting, the manipulations. I wasn't going to be her victim anymore. Just as I thought I had said it all, I felt my phone buzz on the counter. I turned to see a message from my lawyer confirming that the case was moving forward. The shock hit me like a wave. I glanced at my mother, but her face was drained of color. She had no defense this time, no more excuses. I read the message aloud. "The judge has ruled in your favor. The estate is now officially yours." For a brief moment, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. It was over. This final piece of the puzzle, the thing that had kept me shackled, was now mine. And yet I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, there was only a bitter emptiness. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it represented. The years I had wasted. The trust that had been broken. The lies that had shaped my life. I looked at her one last time. "You thought you were protecting me, but you were just keeping me in chains," I said, my voice steady. "And now, it's over. You don't get to control me anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. I had spent years waiting for her to apologize, for her to give me the love I needed. But now I understood. She couldn't, not without acknowledging the depth of her actions, and that was something she wasn't ready to do. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." But it didn't matter anymore. "Goodbye, Mom," I said quietly, turning away from her. "This ends today." As she left, I sat in the silence of my apartment, the weight of everything that had just happened settling in. There was no sense of triumph, just the steady drumbeat of finality. I walked to the window and looked out at the city, the lights flickering below. It was a new world, one that I had created for myself. It was scary, yes, but it was also mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. I was looking ahead. A few hours later, I received another call from my lawyer. The documents had been signed. Everything was final. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand, staring at the empty space where my mother had stood only hours before. The finality of it all settled over me, but there was no fear, no sadness, just a sense of peace. I had won. The next day, I stood in front of a mirror looking at the person I had become. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in my life, I was excited to find out. I was free from the shackles of my family's expectations, free to create the life I had always dreamed of. The future was mine to shape. As I stand here reflecting on my journey, I want to share something with all of you, something that might resonate with those of you who have ever felt unheard, unseen, or powerless. Life isn't just about enduring the hardships, it's about finding the strength within ourselves to change our path, to reclaim what was lost, and to stand tall in the face of adversity. I've learned that you don't need to wait for someone else's approval or apology to move forward. Often, the hardest battle is within ourselves, the battle to forgive, to let go, and to take control of our own future. And as you follow your own journey, remember this: the greatest power you have is the power to choose. Choose yourself. Choose peace. Choose the life you deserve, even when it's hard. To anyone out there who feels like they're stuck in a cycle of negativity, of family or friends who hold you back, it's time to reclaim your narrative. Yes, the road is hard, but you're not alone. There's a world of people who understand, who support, and who encourage you to be the best version of yourself. And as you take those first steps toward your own transformation, I urge you to keep going. The future is never set in stone, and it's always up to you to write your next chapter. Don't let anyone, family, friends, or society tell you that you don't have the right to succeed, to find happiness, or to live the life that truly fulfills you. If you found this story meaningful, or if it has touched your heart in any way, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment with number 1 if this resonated with you, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like the video, that's okay too. Let me know why and where you're watching from, so we can continue improving and connecting with each other. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. I'll be back with more. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Take care, and remember, your story is still being written. Keep turning the pages.